Hello. In this video, what we will do is we're going to talk about how to implement a gross pay. All right, program, and it's a simple program. All right, let's say you work for number of hours, right? Number of hours you worked in a day, and your wage, how much is your wage? All right, so let's say you worked in a day 8 hours, and your pay per hour, pay per hour is let's say it's $14. All right, let's keep it simple. So in general, at the end of the day, how much would you be getting paid is the question, right? Here the amount of pay is obviously how much is that? $211, $112, right? At the end of the day, you would get this amount, isn't it? So how did we arrive at this number? Is what we did was number of hours, we multiplied that with the pay per hour. So hours times pay per hour, right? That's what we did. So here, in order to compute, let's say this is the calculator, pay calculator, right? Pay calculator. Right? So what are the two things that we need to get this number? One is the number of hours we need that you worked, right? That and and your rate, pay rate, your pay rate per hour, hourly rate is the amount. So these two things are needed, right, to compute the total pay. The total pay, if you go here, the total or the gross pay. So you need the two things. One is the hourly pay, a number of hours you worked, right? Number one, that's the main thing. And the second is the hourly rate. Two things we need to get your total pay. So no matter what, how many hours you worked, whatever the hourly rate is, this is the expression that you would use. All right, so this is the key. This is the key in the calculation. This is the formula you would use, right? So this is the needed for your calculator. If you don't have that, you cannot really compute, right? If you don't know how many hours you worked, you can't really compute the total. And if you don't know the hourly rate, you cannot compute that too. So these two are needed to compute the total, right? So if you had to give this calculator to someone, you got to tell them what to enter, right? You can't just give them and ask them to figure it out. So you need to document what this program is doing. First, what is the objective, right? What is it doing? Objective. You can't just give them and figure it out. And what is the input to the program? So in our case, our input is the hourly rate and the number of hours. That's the very key. And output, right? The output. So you need to tell the user what is that this program is doing, and you got to tell them what the input, and you got to tell them what the output. So in all the programs that you write, right, you have to first, there are many approaches. First, you need to figure out what the program will eventually do, right? And this is what you document, of course, right? And how you achieve that output using the input is the algorithm. This is the bread and butter of your program. Usually you don't publish how you achieved it, right? It's a top secret. It's a patentable idea that you have, and the algorithm, this is the main algorithm or the meat of your program. How did you achieve that number, right? How did you calculate that number? So you don't have to document that, but generally it's either given or you figure that out. All right. So with this, what we will do is we will now we need to translate these requirements, right? These requirements into a program, right? This is the top level, how you achieve the output, and what are the requirements that you have, the inputs, and what are the things it will do, right? So you need to translate this into, and it doesn't matter what program you would use, right? Let me 1 second. So it doesn't matter what language you use, right? It doesn't matter, but you can document what language it's written in. So you can use C language, C++, Java, you can C#, it goes on, right? So in that language, this is your algorithm, right? Let's write the algorithm what you wrote, right? Total equal to hour, number of hours you worked, times pay per hour, right? Number of hours you worked. So in any program that you write, you should be able to this is your let me just take this guy a little down, right? So let me also so that is, so in order to compute the total, it is dependent on two things, right? So pretend you have a user inputting the value, right? Inputs the hour, right? Hour, and user inputs the hourly rate. You need those two things before you would even compute the total, right? It's pay per hour. So your program requires these two values. Let's write down that also, right? You need, it's a minimum requirement for your program to work is these two. And when they feed in the values to the program, hourly rate times the hour, you compute the total. So the first step is step 1, right? You need to ask the user what is the hourly number of hours you worked. Number 2, what is the hourly rate? Number 3, you compute the total. Number 4, you are going to print the total. Print the total. All right. So no matter which language you use, your program should work like this, right? So you can take any language and compute that, right? So let's take our simple. I'll just use a Visual Studio here. New project. We'll just take a new project. And in the new project, we will use the so it takes first time, it always takes a little time. And let's take the console app Visual Basic. We will get to other things, right? We will get to that, right? All right, it's total pay. All right. All right. All right. So here, in any program, like we talked, first you need to inform the program what are you trying to achieve. Say number of hours worked as integer. This is a declaration. We'll come to that, right? Hourly pay as integer. Let's keep it everything integer for now. Make it simple. And dimension total as integer. Okay. So first we are done with declaring the variables like we talked. In all programming languages, you have to define those 3 variables. How did we get these 3 variables? Is coming from here. All right, hourly rate, pay hour, and the total. So we have 3 variables we have, right? Now you need to ask the user what the value is, right? Before we get that, we can even use some standard values for now, right? Number of hours worked, we can just say equal to 20 hours. And hourly pay, we can just leave it to say $14, right? So total equal to, this is your, like we talked, right? We talked total. Now step 1, step 2, step 3. Now we got everything we have. to compute our total. The total is number of hours times hourly pay. So all you got to do is cut and paste that and hourly pay. All right. So that's all it is. So now we need to print it out. We talked in the class, how do we print it? We just say use this simple, we can use this simple right line function. Total is very simple, right? Total. That's it, right? So for these two values, we are now hard coding the values. We just want to make sure that this works. All right, there are many ways to write it. You can even start as the user instead, but we're not doing that yet. All right, we'll do that later. Let's make sure that for two values, number of hours 20 and 14 is hourly pay. What would be our total, right? It should be how much it is. You guessed it, right? So let's go and check if the guessed value is right or wrong, right? Ta-da! That should basically match your data that you have. All right, doesn't matter which language you use, they should match your expected value, right? So you should go ahead and test it for a couple of other things. Number of hours 15, hourly pay, let's say hourly pay could be maybe is $10, right? So you guessed it what the value should be, and you go and test it out. 150. So you need to test, let's say the number of hours is 0, right? It should be total is 0. So it matches. So we are able to conclude that our algorithm that we used to compute the total pay matches our expected values. Algorithm we used to calculate our total pay, right? In this case, it's a simple one-line algorithm, right? But in general, it's not the case. It goes several lines of code to figure out what the value is, right? It takes a lot of calculations. But we are now we are getting the basics of algorithm design. Like I said, always start at the end. How do you achieve your recipe? This is your recipe, and what all you need to implement the recipe, right? You take any recipe in the world, go and Google that, right? They will say step 1 do this, step 2 do this, step 3 do that. They keep, right? But for that to work, you need to figure out what does it need. If they say add water 3 liters, you need to go and fetch water, right? So that is, this number of hours worked is like a water, okay? And if they say add salt, what does it mean? You need to have salt with you. So this is what it is. Hourly pay is like a salt. So for the recipe is a step-by-step procedure, right? Algorithm is the same thing, step-by-step procedure. But what you need for the recipe, what you need for the algorithm is you need to figure that out and feed those inputs to the algorithm. That's very key. All right. So if you just write a simple diagram, another diagram here, maybe I'll take another one here. So here you have, this is your algorithm, okay? Oh, this is your algorithm, right? Black box. This is a black box. You're not going to tell anybody how it works because you need to make money, right? and for that there's input. The input will come in input 1. There are several inputs might be coming, right? Input 2, and you're going to deliver something using those two things, right? This is the output. Your program may have many outputs too, right? So you need to, based on the algorithm, you need to figure out how many inputs does it require for it to work. Okay, so that is the basics of any algorithm design, right? And design is something, and then implementing. We are implementing here in the Visual Studio, right? It's one of the most simple things to use, and it doesn't matter which programming language you use, it should be the same thing, right? You can't tell your paycheck can be less because you used Java. That should not be the case. You can't say the pay is high, my total number we calculate is high because we used C language. That's not acceptable either. So it doesn't matter which language you use, doesn't matter which language you doesn't matter which language you use, your output should be the same, right? Which doesn't matter which language you use, your output should be the same, right? So we will solve many problems. Now what I want you guys to do is try to replicate this program and submit it. All right, and I want you to submit the test cases that you did. All right, we tested for 3 cases, so I want you to also come up with the test cases and document it and submit it. All right, thank you.